Sometimes people think self-care is selfish. It's not. It's self-care. It's self-love. Selfish is this. I want what I want 100% of the time, and I don't really care what you want. Okay, that's selfish. Self-care is one of the most selfless things you can do for a relationship because of the impact it has on the couple's relationship.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Mom Squad podcast, where we talk all things parenting. And today, the topic that I'm tackling is something a little off from kids and taking care of kids. It's taking care of yourself and taking care of your relationship. And with me now is relationship coach Kathy Dawson, who is just always amazing to talk to. Kathy, I'm so glad that we're sitting down and talking about the foundation. I mean, the really, like, one of the most important relationships we'll ever have with our significant other, our spouse.
Yep. Yes. You know, kids need to know that mom and dad love them. Yes. But more importantly, they need to know that mom or dad or mommy and daddy love each other.
Yeah. I mean, it sets a tone for the whole household. And I think even just keeping that in mind, as we take a look back at a very strange year, even the strongest relationships, I'm sure, went through some trials and tribulations as everybody's been, locked down and not in the normal routine. How do you think, from clients, from people that you've talked to, and just from your own observations, how has this past year changed relationships?
Oh, well, first of all, when this all happened, when people get in a committed relationship or they get married, they're not signing up for 24/7. If you knew that was going to happen, you would just walk back down the other part of the aisle or whatever. Yeah, that's just not part of it, right? So that was the biggest impact that I saw from my perspective, was couples who all of a sudden had space in their relationship, whether it was they were going to work or they did their hobby or whatever it was, all of a sudden, boom, they're together all the time. And honestly, depending on how big their space was, it could, on a spectrum, 0 to 10, I mean, 0 being it's terrible, it could really be that. It's one thing if you have a home where you're kind of chopped up and you have some spaces for privacy, excuse me, but if you're in a small, like, New York apartment, it's rough, all right? So that's one of the biggest things, is figuring out, okay, I love this person, but I'm losing myself. All right. I'm losing myself to this situation. So I have to learn how to fill myself up and take care of myself for my sanity. So that was probably the biggest thing that I saw occur in this last year and a half.
Yeah. Since you bring it up, I mean, it's been such a headline and hot topic of self-care, mental health. Just for a minute, can you talk about just how important it is for us to, I mean, really the foundation starts with me as an individual, making sure that I'm okay and I'm a whole person. And that can change throughout a relationship, right?
Oh, absolutely. Especially in a global pandemic. So one of the things I ask couples to do is create what's called a PEMS list. It's an acronym I use. P is for physical. That means, how am I moving my body every day? What am I putting in my mouth? And am I sleeping enough? I mean, these are pretty basic things, but really important. The E stands for emotional. So this is all about feelings. We're feeling beings. So we've got to take care of that part of ourselves. So am I able to express myself constructively? Or do I shove my feelings in? Do I avoid situations? I mean, that section of the 4 letters is critical. The next one is mental. This is about what is renting space in our head on a daily basis. Are the thoughts mostly negative, or are they mostly positive? And if they're mostly negative, not a good thing, right? We got to balance that out. I mean, we're all going to have some negative stories in our head, but we have to balance that out. The other thing, the S is for spiritual. And this is different for everybody. For some, it has to do with religion. For others, it doesn't. It could have to do with nature. It could have to do with meditating, whatever it is, right? That's the spiritual side of yourself, which you then bring to the relationship.
Mhm.
So I really pound this home when I'm working with a couple. I have them make a PEMS list, and I ask them to put in there at least one thing from each category of the PEMS that they say they'll be accountable, and that's the operative word, accountable for doing to take care of themselves.
Mm.
Because you bring yourself to every relationship. And you said this, if you're depleted, how's that going to go? I mean, if you're eating junk food all day and you don't move your body at all, and you don't think about anything constructive or have anything to exercise your mind, or you've stuffed the whole thing is a nightmare. Okay. So I want to point this out. Sometimes people think self-care is selfish. It's not.
Mm.
It's self-care. It's
Mm.
self-love. Selfish is this. I want what I want 100% of the time, and I don't really care what you want. Okay, that's selfish.
Mm.
Self-care is one of the most selfless things you can do for a relationship because of the impact it has on the couple's relationship.
Yeah. No, it's such a great point. As my husband was joking, of course, but me working basically an overnight shift, morning shift on maternity leave, I actually got more sleep on maternity leave than I would if I was working. And at the end of maternity leave, I was asking him if he was okay with me going back. And he just said, gosh, you're so much nicer when you get a full night's sleep. I don't know, and that's something I didn't even realize. Like when you're going through it yourself, where one of those categories is missing or a couple of those categories, it's hard to recognize that you're sacrificing something because you think you're doing it for the whole of the family.
Yeah, it backfires on you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, sleep is so fundamental and we take it for granted, but oh no, I personally have to get at least 7 hours or I'm wasted. So, and that, how can you interact with another human being if you're all like discombobulated and just out of whack?
So when you have them make that list, do you see light bulbs go off in people's heads thinking, oh gosh, wow, I really haven't been doing that for myself?
Yes. Well, before I have them make the list, I do what's called a relationship hierarchy with 6 components, and self is one of the components. And boy, many times self is at the bottom, especially in women with young kids. It's just how it shows up. And so that's kind of a shock to them, like, oh, geez, I really don't do much for myself, right? And then I have them make the PEMS list. So, okay, you don't do much for yourself. Let's start from scratch. Imagine you do things for yourself. What would you do? And that's when the light bulb comes on. I guess I could stop drinking pop,
Yeah.
or I guess I could drink more water, or maybe not buy so many snacks, or, it's the little changes that make the biggest difference.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when you're talking about this, I have a book sitting on my nightstand because I always think, okay, you know what, this week I'm going to have time to sit down. I'm going to have time to read for myself. Or, you think, okay, we're going to put the kids to bed and then we're going to drink a glass of wine together and talk about our week. But then kids don't go to bed on time or life gets so busy. How do you help clients find that time to connect?
So this is going to sound a little strange, but kids, depending on the age, will understand this demonstration.
Mm-hmm.
I ask people to get a pitcher and fill it up with food colored water, right? And put like 4 or 5 glasses in front of the pitcher, and you get your kids in the circle and you say, I want to explain something to you. Let's pretend this is mommy. You're holding the pitcher, and you're going to say, throughout any day, I help you guys, right? I give to you, and then I give to daddy, or vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And then I give to my mom, and then I give to my work, and I give to my friend. And all of a sudden, the liquid's almost gone. Kids love visuals. And so then you say, look what happened to mommy. A lot of her energy, which is the liquid, is gone. And mommy needs more energy. So this is what mommy's going to do this week. Take one of the glasses and say, mommy's going to read for 20 minutes, pour it back in. Mommy's going to take a walk for 15, pour it back in. Mommy's going to go get a manicure, pour it back. Whatever it is that you need to do to fill your pitcher back up, right? And kids are like, oh, wow. And then you can relate to that template kind of thing, that example, and say, oh, mommy's pitcher's starting to get empty. Oh, her pitcher's empty. It's getting empty. Okay, everybody get out of the way. She's got to do her thing. So that's one really concrete way to do. You can also do it with your husband. You know, sometimes our partners don't get that we only have so many hours in a day and so much energy in a day.
Yeah, oh, I love it. I love that idea. You have also, I mean, we've talked over the years, and you're a wealth of knowledge when it comes to reconnecting throughout the day. And some of those things that you have reminded me years ago about, I think about even on a daily basis. I'd love for you to share just ways that couples should be connecting, and it is physically throughout the day.
Yeah, it's actually non-sexual non-sexual touching. There are 5 points of connection. They're pretty critical, and they add up to 19 seconds. So nobody can tell me they don't have time. So the first connection is upon awakening. So you don't want to shake your partner and say, wake up, wake up. But before bounding out of bed to start your day, you know, maybe just kiss the person on the back of their head. They won't even feel it, but subliminally, they'll know they're being connected with, right? Mm-hmm. The next one is before you separate for the day, which is interesting because nowadays, maybe people aren't separating as much because they're working from home. So then you have to kind of figure out a time every day you do this. You give your partner and each other a 5-second hug. So a 5-second hug is not, I'm going to get you. Dog toy here to explain what this is. It's a dog's toy. So a 5-second hug is not.
Yeah.
There's no petting, there's no rubbing. Okay. There's no movement. So what you're doing is you're holding for 5 seconds and you're exchanging heart energy. You can make it longer if you want, but at least 5 seconds. Yeah. So many times we just do that perfunctory kiss, you know, that doesn't really, I call it the cardboard kiss. It doesn't really connect you with the person. So the 5-second hug is very good to do that. Now, the third point of connection isn't tactile, it's technological. This is the only way I think technology can bring it together, is if you use texting and you say 4 words in the text. I'm thinking of you. So let's say you send your husband something at 10 in the morning. He's not allowed to say, I'm thinking of you too, because he's only doing that because you're thinking of him. He's got to send his own separate text of, I'm thinking of you. Just each of you do it once a day at a random time. Mm-hmm. You know, you need to acknowledge back, like with a heart or a smile or something, to let the person know you got it. That's number 3. Number 4 is called the 10-second kiss. So this is at the end of the day when work is done, and whether you're home or you're not home, you reunite. And I have to clarify this. This is not a kiss with any kind of agenda attached to it. Because remember, this is non-sexual connection. Mm-hmm. So, but what this does is it sets the tone for the evening. Yeah, you can go so far as to set a timer. Now, the kids may be around, right? People say, oh, I can't do that in front of the kids. Why not? Remember, kids need to know that mommy and daddy love each other. So you can even have them be the timer. 1, 2, you can scream out the numbers or whatever. And then that's it. But that does set the tone. I'm telling you, no matter what else happens for the rest of the night, it's not going to break you 2 apart. Right. That's number 4. Number 5, the last one, is end your day together. At least 3 nights a week. I'm not an extremist. I'm not saying you have to do it every night, but at least 3 nights a week. Get under the covers within 5 minutes of each other, because you know you got to brush your teeth and all that. And before what we want to avoid is night and roll over, right? So before you fall asleep, you can cuddle, you can hold hands, whatever you want to do. I mean, if you want to have sex, go right ahead. But you know, I'm not saying you can't. But at least just don't go to sleep without touching each other. Mm-hmm. That sounds awful to me.
You know, and all these things are so simple. It's so simple. And like I said, I mean, spoiler alert, you told me about this years ago, and I've thought about it throughout the day, because sometimes we get to the end of the day and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, did we hug? I don't know. It's gotten so busy. And so is it hard? Right. Have you noticed couples that you coach, do they have to write it down at first? I mean, is this something we should put Post-its around just to get into the routine? But does that take the romance out of it then? I mean,
well, here's the thing. I'm their Post-it note. So every week I send them homework through an email. Mm-hmm. And they have this thing called a weekly meeting, right? And at the weekly meeting, they go over the agenda that I send them. It sounds structured, but if you have a hectic life, you need this. All right.
Yeah.
You got too many moving parts. You need to carve out at least 15 to 20 minutes. Tell your kids, this is our time. What are you doing? We're talking, you're going to go watch a movie or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Clean the kitchen, whatever it is. And they learn to like this time. It's like, are you
Mhm.
having your weekly meeting? You know, they really like that.
Yeah.
So you go through the agenda. What you do in the agenda is you confirm the next meeting to make sure it stays on the calendar. Then you schedule a date for a date with each other. So you stay accountable to it. And then you share your PEMS for the week, what you did to take care of yourself. And this is about celebrating whatever it is you did. This isn't about criticizing. Oh, why didn't you do this, this, or this? No, it's about you did one thing. Yay, way to go. That's great. And so that kind of cements that in your own mind that you're doing it. So that's good. The other thing that we use the weekly meeting for, they can cross-check their calendars, so the words, I didn't know that was happening, don't come out of your mouth, right? The other thing I ask them to do is review and record your successes as a couple. Whatever that means, whether it's you did the homework, you felt special connection, whatever it is, because we all have a story in our head about our relationship.
Right.
And when people come to see me, many times it's a negative story. So I tell them right off the bat, we're going to learn to rewrite your story. All right. You're doing the best you can with the information you have, but you need new information. And so over the course of 12 weeks, I teach them 35 tools for their relationship. Many of them have to do with communication because that's critical, but they also have to do with connection, because this is a problem. Because of phones or stimulus or whatever it is that's going on, we're fighting this feeling of disconnection.
Dates, you brought up dates, and I think what was interesting is that COVID lockdowns forced people to get a little creative, and we couldn't go do I know most couples fall into the rut of going out to dinner. And then I think from everything I heard with friends, there seemed to be two camps when it came to dating. You're whether you're married or not, but like just going out and going on a date during lockdown, and it was gosh, we can't figure it out, we're at home, we're stuck at home. Or there was I feel like there was another set of people that found different things to do that was like away from crowds, outdoors, or like took up hiking, or like I took up golf so that we could go and do something different and not go to a restaurant. But getting creative, how important is it to now we're in a golf rut. I mean, like we always get into ruts. How important is it to keep creativity in the activities that you do?
It's paramount. So romance equals spontaneity and creativity. So if it's planned everything's planned down to the minute, wake me when it's over. All right. I need to have some surprises in there. So one of the things I tell people when they plan a date is make sure you don't tell your partner what you're doing to the very last minute or at all, and just take them on like a scavenger hunt or something. They don't have to know what you're doing. That adds anticipation to the date. Yeah. So no, people they've been great. They've been pretty creative. I wrote a book called Pandemic Dates during this whole thing. And it was from all the people who were on the creative camp, right? And things like baking together. Most people are like, but hey, you're stuck in the house together. Oh, sounds good. Let's try it. Baking together, cooking together, making crafts together, anything, something different, right? There are these I have them here, these little things I may have shown you before, but they're called chat pack cards.
Yes, the chat packs. Yeah, the questions.
Yeah, there's one called chat pack for two, TWO. The questions, I've been married 37 years, and Dick and I went through the whole thing during the pandemic, and we learned some new stuff about each other that we didn't know. So I tell people, especially during the pandemic, turn off your phones, have 2 techno-free nights a week, at least. And then do something other than looking at your phone. Don't use your phone, look at your phone, play a game, play cards, play backgammon, whatever. But we are so creatures of habit, and we build these trenches in our brain, these runways, and we get used to doing the same thing all over. And it's good for us. I mean, you're young, but as you get older, we got to start switching up the synapses because things are getting the same thing all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you just gotta you have to get creative. Now, some people aren't naturally that way. It's a learned skill. So you have to think out of the box. You know, there's this book I have all kinds of books here, but one is an oldie but goodie. It's called 2002 Ways to Be Romantic by Gregory J.P. Godek. I don't know how this guy did it, but anyway, he came up with some interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do these, you know, I think about couples that, I mean, people fall into ruts, there's tense times, there's times of argument. And if somebody feels like, gosh, we're really heading down a slippery slope, or things have just been really tense for a while, are these things that you're recommending? Do you see them turn relationships around? And is it a matter of tweaking in some cases?
Well, usually when you're feeling like we're going down the tubes here,
Yeah.
it has to do with avoidance of not nipping things in the bud, letting things build up, and not knowing how to keep their communication pipeline clean. So what happens is we clog the pipeline between us with habits that we have in communicating, whether it's, well, I interrupt a lot, or I yell, or I'm sarcastic, or I'm condescending, or I avoid, I name call. What else? There's 10 of them. I'm just trying to think of them off the. Oh, I'm a go-oner. Okay, that's somebody who just goes on and on and on. You know, I am a recovering go-on. When we were first married, my husband's eyes would glaze over, and I realized it's because I don't shut up, right? So there are all these ways, and all they are habits. In fact, let me show you this sign I have in my office. If you could read this out loud, tell me what this is here.
People do not decide their futures, they decide their habits, and their habits decide their futures. I love it, by F.M. Alexander.
Yes, there it is in a nutshell.
Yeah.
We have to be willing to be aware of our habits.
Yeah.
And figure out which ones are serving the relationship and which ones aren't. And that's about personal accountability. The big thing, you can't be in a relationship for very long if you can't be personally accountable for your part.
What you brought up was something I always go back to. So I'm Catholic, my husband's not. We did pre-Cana. For any Catholics out there, they know what that is, where you go and you almost do like a relationship counseling before the marriage. And, you know, it's a class that you check off to get married in the Catholic Church. And it was funny because a nun said something, and I'm going to totally misquote her, but it's along the lines of what you just said, of basically where there's a lack of communication, tension grows in that space. So where you're leaving the communication open, not like open communication, but where you're not communicating, something else bad grows in that space. And that's always stuck with me. Yes. And I promised my husband from day one, he said, you're not going to be one of those people that like doesn't tell me for days when you're mad. And he said, oh no, you're going to know immediately. And I'm going to explain exactly what you did wrong. And then I have kept that promise. We joke about it all the time, but communication, I mean, just talking out the feelings when they're happening, is that part, like, I mean, how much of the pie is that when it comes to making sure that your relationship stays on track?
So I just had a client this morning that we talked about this. So it's a slippery slope only in that you have to be aware of what kind of, how your partner processes information. So have you ever done the Myers-Briggs personality test?
I think I've done some, I don't know if it was the Myers-Briggs, but I've done a personality test, and I know my husband has. Yeah. Okay.
So in Myers-Briggs, they give you 4 letters, and I'm just going to talk about 2 of them. One is an I, which stands for introvert. And that means the person needs space to process. Okay. The other one is an E, and that's an extrovert. That means the person likes to talk out here about the issue and resolve it right away. So it's often the case that you've got an I and an E living together. So the person who wants to nip it in the bud and talk about it, resolve it, I don't know, what are you? Are you a nip it in the bud, talk about it person?
I'm sure yeah, I can't remember when I
I'm the
haven't been.
same.
So yes.
My husband is I can't do this right now. I have
Mhm.
to process it. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, is this a way of squirming out of this whole thing? This is the early years. So I teach couples this tool called Let's Reconvene at Fill in the Time. So if you got an I and an E together and the E wants to resolve it and the I needs to process, the I is the one that has to say, look, I need space to process. Let's reconvene. It's got to be within 24 hours. You have to put a specific time in 10 minutes, in a half an hour, in 3 hours, whatever this person needs to process. And you better show up because
Yeah.
that's an opportunity to trust the person's going to show up, right?
Mm.
Then you talk about it. Now, you mentioned that you like to nip things in the bud and you make sure you let your husband know that you're
Yeah.
upset or angry. So that's part of it is the how, when you talk about it, but then how do you talk about it? Are we doing it constructively? So
Mhm.
that's where the whole communication pipeline and how we clog it comes in. So I
Mhm.
teach people how to get rid of the habits that are clogging the pipeline, how to communicate in your heart of hearts how you feel about something.
Mhm.
And now this is interesting. If it's something you think the person did, you're not allowed to say, well, I feel like you, or I feel that you. That's
Uh-huh.
not a feeling. That's a judgment. And
Right.
that's going to get you in an argument.
I've always heard that that's how you should phrase it though,
Yeah.
is, well, I feel like you were, minimizing my feelings or whatever. But I've always heard you start, so you don't
Well,
start the
you got
sentence that
part
way.
of it. You got part of it. You say,
Uh-huh.
when first you set the situation, when I heard you call me sloppy, I'm making this up.
Yeah.
When I heard you call me sloppy, I felt severely offended.
Mhm.
All right. So you're going straight to the feeling word. You're not going to say, I feel you were rude.
Mhm.
Because you're mad and calling him a rude person, right?
Right.
That's
You're just
now,
adding I feel on top of it. Yeah.
yeah. So when you say I feel, you got to make sure you follow it with the feeling word,
Mhm.
right? And here's what and you got to say, well, what I'd like to see happen instead of that, you calling me a sloppy person, is that you tell me what you'd like me to do rather than giving me a naming,
Mhm.
calling me a name.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is a whole thing. This is why I work with people 12 weeks because it takes time for me to figure out what their habits are and get them to be aware of them. Then I got to give them new information and then they got to practice it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
it's
mean,
school.
putting all of that into practice is part of the hard part, is to remember that in the heat of the moment of the argument, of
I know.
the moment where you discover the pile of laundry on the floor or whatever it is, the sloppiness. Um, for couples who really feel like they've been on a good track, and as I was telling you before, like we were joking around like, oh yeah, no, everything's fine with us, but we're not like, I don't know. We're so busy with kids. It's not like we're putting a lot of time into growing the relationship the way it was in the beginning. And I think that's when I talk to friends and everything, the romance isn't like when you first started dating or when you first got married, when there's little kids around. It's just, hey, let's try and make a date night. With couples who are like that, is there a way? I mean, you already went through the 5 points of contact, but are there other ways, communication wise, or just what ways do you grow that relationship when it is a very difficult and time constrained time, I guess?
I remember this time in life,
Yeah.
little kid, and I felt like, oh my Lord, this is it. I mean, I love my children,
Yeah.
but hey, I married this guy. So what's happening? So there's a formula for a successful relationship. It seems simplistic, but I'm telling you, this is what Dick and myself did, and it worked great. Our kids are healthy, well adjusted. They have, everybody's got issues, but for most of the part, everybody's great, right? So you have a date night once a week,
Yeah.
unless there's blood or some serious thing going on. You stick with it, and if you miss a soccer game, it's not the end of the world. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's one thing. And the date needs to be at least an hour and a half long. If you want an 8-hour date, great, go for it. But at least an hour and a half long. Now, the other thing is once a quarter, So you're doing this every week. You're having a date. Once a quarter, you have what's called a mini moon. You know what a honeymoon is, right? A mini moon is 1 or 2 nights away once a quarter. So 4 times a year. And I know during the pandemic you couldn't, but things are easing up and hopefully stay that way. You can get away. You can go camping if you want, but just get away from the kids. You know, they need to see somebody different than you. Now, the last one is once a year, get away for a week. We did this the whole time our kids were little. You know, I remember feeling guilty, and then I get on the plane and think, what kids? I have kids? I don't even know. It's really, really important to do this.
Yeah.
Now, people, you know, I've taught hundreds of workshops over the years, and women, oh my God, we don't have any babysitters. Well, you know, our parents were gone. We didn't have them either, but we networked, we figured it out.
Yeah.
So don't talk to me about babysitters. There's a way to get this done.
Yeah.
I don't mean to be brash, but
no, you bring up a great point. I mean, because that's the topic of conversation when I'm among friends. You know, some people are really good at finding those overnight babysitters or their families in town. And then I have other friends that family's not in town and they don't know where to turn. But you're right. I mean, it is so important to get away and make sure that reconnecting is a priority, which is pretty much why we're sitting here talking today.
Exactly. And you know what? You want to make memories together.
Right.
Because these school years zip by, right? Yeah. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, what have we done? Oh, well, we've been hanging out with the kids. And I love kids. I love family. But I have a thing about our culture. I'm making generalization. I think we've become too kid-centric. You know, everything's about the kids. Well, that doesn't do the kids a service, because then they wake up walking around as adults thinking the world owes them stuff, right? So, you know what? Your parents are the number, you said at the beginning of the segment, the parents are the foundation. Right. So if we start getting cracks in our foundation, we've got to figure out how to fill those cracks, or it's going to affect the entire family.
Yeah. And everything you have said has been so extremely helpful. I feel like this has been a good therapy session for anybody who's listening and thinking, gosh, I really need to get back into the romantic vibe at home. And post-pandemic, we've all gotten a little off track on date nights and everything. So
oh my gosh. And there's also one other little thing I want to share with you. I don't think I have it on my desk, so hang on one second. I keep getting I'm surprised for editing. But I give each couple, or I mail it to them now. This did I show you this before? I think I've shown you this. The little pinkish reddish heart.
Yes, you have shown me that.
So it's with poster putty on it, and it's you just put it somewhere, and your partner's going to go, what is this? And you're going to say, well, I just put it there to let you know I was thinking of you. And then if he's smart, he's going to go, okay, well, I'm going to do that too. And then all of a sudden, when you least expect it, the heart shows up. It's just a small gesture, but it means a lot.
Yeah. I mean, everything you said, it's the little things that all add up throughout the day and really create that relationship that we want.
The final analysis, you want to feel like you matter.
Right.
That's it.
Gosh, I mean, isn't that every relationship and person to person and what the world needs right now? Everybody wants respected and feeling like they matter.
That's right. That they're thought of. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not complicated, but
Kathy, everything you said is so great. Kathy Dawson, relationship coach. Thank you so much for all the great advice. We're all going to gladly put this into practice. I mean, these are easy things to do and fun things to do with our significant others. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And thank you to all of you listening to the Mom Squad pod. We'll see you right back here next time.